One. Welcome to the DJ Storybook interview series where how the COVID-19 has affected our lives and beyond. My name is Brian Murphy. Welcome. You know, in our lives, we've explored probably many different things. We've explored maybe cooking. We have probably done things in this last year maybe you probably wouldn't have done before. Maybe your passions has changed. Maybe like, hey, I want to exercise more. Well, today we're going to talk about exercise. And we're going to specifically talk about Pilates and talk about why it's so good for us and the benefits. And we're also going to talk about how we can learn to teach other people, how we're going to train. How do we want to be trained and then train other people? What does that mean? Well, today, someone who's very, very passionate about Pilates, as well as I am. So we're talking to two people who are really into Pilates. MaraSievers. Hi, Mara.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good to see you. And so we've had some great conversations, and I just want people just to hear our conversations about Pilates. So talk to all of us, tell who you are, what you're doing, and so on and so forth.
So I am a Pilates instructor. I used to own a studio in New Hampshire for 8 years. I sold that in November 2019, just before the pandemic. And I transitioned online. So now I am basically, I have a membership online in the teacher training program. So I'm helping Pilates teachers become better teachers, improve their teaching skills, help people better, because I find that there is a need for that. In terms of my passion for Pilates, Pilates has been a lifesaver for me personally on several occasions. I've had 2 herniated discs. I currently have a torn ACL, and it's always been there for me in terms of making me feel better every single time. It's such an amazing technique to make you stronger, do anything that you want to achieve physically, and nothing else. I've tried everything. Like, I've been a group fitness instructor before that. I've been a yoga instructor. I've been a dancer. I've done it. And nothing worked for my body the way that Pilates does. And so I'm incredibly passionate about it. Just recently I had just had this ACL injury this last month, and it reignited my passion once more. Like, whenever there's anything going wrong with the body, I realize, oh my God, I can't believe that I can help myself so well with this method. So I'm really passionate in sharing it.
Love it, Mara. So maybe go in a little more detail about what Pilates is about. Like, it's benefited me because of what particular things that you want to share that has benefited by Pilates.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tough question, because I think it's hard for us to answer. Even Pilates teachers have a hard time answering this sometimes, because it can do so much. Like, you probably can talk. Maybe the list of things that you can achieve with Pilates is shorter than the list of things you can achieve.
Go for it. Yes.
So, but I think where Pilates excels, where it really stands out from all other forms of exercise, is rehab and correcting movement patterns. And when I say rehab, there's a difference between structural problems and movement pattern problems. So some, like a torn ACL, Pilates can't fix per se. It can't knit my ACL back together. That's a structural problem. There's tissue damage. But a lot of our aches and pains and stuff like that we have that cause discomfort and pain are caused just by imbalance in muscles and misalignment of bones. Then Pilates can fix. So it really excels there, and it really does it like nothing else. And on the other end of the spectrum is performance enhancement. So when like athletes, it's a fantastic way of cross training, and I know that you used Pilates as cross training, and it's for any sport, really. You can use it as cross training, and it's amazing like that, because it balances you out. Like anything that you practice, anybody in sports practices the same thing over and over and over and over, which they have to do to get better. But at one point, it works for quite a while and you get better, but at one point it starts to tip, where you do too much of one thing, and that's when you need to balance yourself out. Otherwise, you're going to risk overuse injury or, anything like that. So I think those two extremes of rehab and correcting movement patterns and balancing the body, as well as performance enhancement and sports performance. Those are, I think, the two areas where Pilates really excels. It can do everything else in between too. It can just generally make you fitter, if you want to call it that. But you can do that with other forms of exercise too. You cannot achieve such extreme, like really high athletic states, I think, or you do better when you do Pilates, as well as, and I listened to one of your previous interviews where you said that you weren't never injured, which is, I think, it's like outrageous that you've never been injured dancing.
Yeah, I've been very
Yeah,
good.
so good for you. And like I said, so I'm working, or I used to work a lot with older people, deconditioned people, and injured people, because I've myself have had quite a few injuries. I have developed a huge compassion and understanding for people who go through that. So this has been a little bit more my focus. So the level of individualization in Pilates is just amazing. It's like you can work on anything and everything. There's not an exercise that you can't, or an issue that you can't address.
Well, I'm gonna go into your training program here, but I want to go a little deeper into what Pilates is. So, is it the way the exercises are put out there? Is it so you have a series of exercises? Is it the order? Is it a particular one? How is it the way the class is set up? It's individual? I mean, is it all the above? I mean, you do like an hour of Pilates, it feels wonderful. But tell me more particular about what the Pilates is that benefits people. A little more particular.
Yeah, great question. It is all of what you said. Yes. So Pilates can be taught in a group class. It can be taught one-to-one. So that's why it's sometimes hard to understand what's the differentiation. And there's different pieces of apparatus, right? There's the reformers, so there's reformer classes, and there's mat classes, and then there's all the other equipment. But my friend Victor Uygan, who is the inventor of the connector, said it very well, and that totally resonates. He said what makes Pilates are the Pilates principles. So there's 6 Pilates principles, and sometimes there's more, which is like control, coordination, awareness, breath, and so on and so forth. So it's not so much the exercise per se. It's not the form of what the movement looks like, or the movement sequence. It's not so much that, in my opinion. It's not the order of the exercises, in my opinion. It's how you do the movement. So something that sets it apart, like a crunch or a chest lift, right? You do that in a lot of other forms of exercises as well, but the way we do it in Pilates is different. Or a bridge, even a bridge, like a yoga bridge, is very different from the way we do a bridge in Pilates. And the reason is that we look for function underneath. So I'm always looking for biomechanical function. I'm looking that all of the right muscles are doing the right thing at the right time, instead of looking at a shape or a form and just copying that, no matter how you can do it. I think that's another side effect of how dancers can benefit so much from Pilates, is because dance is all about, this is what it should look like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what it should look like, make it look like that. It's got to look like that. And Pilates is completely different. It doesn't come from the outside. It comes from, how do you create the movement from within? It doesn't matter what it looks like. It matters what it feels like.
Well, I think that I will agree with you about 80% on the dance. I think that the feeling also has to be in conjunction with the movement pattern, but I would agree with the Pilates in the sense that what you're feeling on the way up and all that stuff is important. Your leg may not be 90 degrees, but how are you holding that leg up? Where does that come from to hold the leg there is important. Absolutely.
Correct.
So,
Because people have different lengths of muscles, right? Like somebody who's been sedentary his whole life the muscles have changed, adapted. Some of them have shortened, some of them have lengthened, some of them have weakened, some of them have strengthened, compared to another person who's been, a triathlete all of her life. Her muscles are much, much different. So when the two people are doing the same sort of exercise and movement, the muscles are not in the same state. So they cannot do the same form of exercise to achieve the same thing. So that's why I always say there's as many Pilates exercises as there is humans, because it will look different on every single person.
Well, now we're getting to what you do and get into sort of this how do you train what you do now. So before we go any farther, this is MaraSievers. I just want everybody to know. And she has a website called the Pilates Encyclopedia. So I want to now get into what you do now. Okay.
Yep. So the Pilates Encyclopedia is a membership program or a membership online for Pilates teachers to just basically improve their teaching skills, to learn to understand their students' individual needs or challenges, and then learn to address those and correct those movement patterns. Because what I just said before is the level of individualization in Pilates is endless, and that is difficult. That's not easy to learn. It's like you develop X-ray eyes over time, or you have to learn to have X-ray eyes and really see what's happening underneath here, all of it, to be able to help that person. So a lot of teacher training programs don't sufficiently prepare teachers for that reality. Like a lot of teacher training programs, you're together with other trainees, you teach each other, and then you get certified, or you get a certificate of completion of that training, and then you start to teach real people, and all of a sudden you realize, but that person, my mother, or this like 6-year-old, whatever, she cannot do the exercise the way I learned it, the way it's supposed to be. What do I do? And that's sort of where my membership picks up, and I want to help teachers feel more confident. It's very stressful when you stand in front of a student. You want to teach them, you want to do well, but you don't know what's happening in that body, and you don't know how to help them. So I want to bridge that gap, because I strongly believe, now we're getting totally into my mission here.
Absolutely.
I strongly believe in the Pilates method. I want the Pilates method to stay alive, and it can only do that. Pilates itself can only thrive if teachers thrive, because teachers are the ones who teach it to everybody. So only if teachers are not only doing a good job in terms of teaching really well, but also making a living and being able to sustain their career long term, that's how the Pilates method will stay alive. So that's sort of my mission on this earth.
Well, I would like to give you 2 components. I want everybody to check the website out and find out who she is. But give me 2 things that you're going to tell if I was your instructor, and you're saying, okay, you know what, Brian, these are the 2 things that will help you.
To make you sort of a better teacher? Yeah, so that's an interesting question, because I will answer it, but it depends on where you're at, right? So I cannot really advise you well without seeing you teach. That's the first thing. That's the whole level of individualization. But I think I'll still answer it. Most people first of all, don't know anatomy well enough in terms of biomechanics and like what is happening during movement in the body. Most teachers don't know that well enough, because once you understand which plane of movement, which joint, which muscles are moving, then you can start to understand if something goes wrong, why it's going wrong, and what you have to address. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, probably goes hand in hand with that, learning to see and learning to recognize, what am I seeing and what does this mean? And then how do I correct it or change it?
Okay, so I'm going to take both of those here. So I'm going to go with the seeing component. Do some people have a more of a natural sense of that?
Yeah, I believe there's talent with everything. But I mean, I don't want to discourage anybody. I mean, I've had, just like you have, I was a dancer. And so I've had a talent for movement per se. I think that's, brought me to where I'm at right now in my life. But in terms of seeing, I remember very distinctly when I started to teach, I saw that something was not right, but I did not know why that was. I had no idea. So it definitely took me, 15 years to get to the point where I finally now do recognize that. And the more you know, like it's a spiral upward. It gets faster once you have some momentum there, but it's definitely a learned skill. It's not, talent will help as always everywhere, but you can learn everything. I think it's the other thing about teaching, right? So for me as a teacher, for the teachers that I teach, but also the teachers who teach clients, I thought of that yesterday a lot because of your dance world, because I think that's something, maybe that's somehow different, or maybe it was just my experience. But a good teacher, so if my student doesn't understand what I think they should understand, then it's my job as a teacher to find another way to explain it so that they will understand. And I think there are many teachers out there who don't do that. And I know it's hard. It's not easy to come up, how can I say this differently? But I think that's the job of a good teacher. In my opinion, that sets apart a good teacher from a not so good teacher.
Well, confidence is the word I just wrote down. I think that being comfortable with actually saying, okay, you know what, let's explore. Let's
I would
actually be very upfront with that person and say, listen, let's explore what is happening, if that's the process that they're looking for. And to be
I totally agree with that. I would maybe, instead of calling it confidence, I would call it honesty and authenticity, because the most powerful words for a teacher to get confident, to become confident, I think, is to say, you know what, honestly, I don't know, but let's try something. And I do this all the time, right? I do this all the time. Okay, let's try a few things to figure out what's going on. And I just try things with the student, and then that informs me and that tells me something so I know more later. But yes, I would totally agree. Being honest about what you don't know will take all the pressure off, will make you more confident, and actually, honestly, will make you more likable too, because people like real people.
They do. They want you to be honest with them. That's the bottom line. And also, I think that you grow as a teacher when you start exploring the different ways that person could get it right or whatever. You start learning also, because everybody's so different.
Absolutely. Curiosity is, I think, another one of those
Yes.
mindsets that's incredibly important. Don't put blinders on and think it has to be a certain way. Just see and learn and let it's a dialogue. Teaching movement is a dialogue, right? You present something, you offer something, try this. The student does something, and then you say, I wonder why that happened. I wonder, so you just enter into this dialogue. And I used to say to my students all the time, sometimes people, when they like your classes, they tell you at the end of the class, oh, this was so great. And I always used to say to them, I'm only half of the job. I can only take half of the credit. I can only take you as far as you are willing to go with me, or as you're listening to me and are able to implement the things that I'm telling you. So it's not just me. If I have students who don't listen, I can't do anything. I can be as good as a teacher as I can be, but not achieving anything.
Correct. Like they can take whatever it is they're going to take. So the other one you said about anatomy. Now, Pilates instructors, are we physical therapists?
Nope.
And when you have all this anatomy, we are treated like a physical therapist, though. They come in and say, well, I have a problem here and here and here. So how do you break that? How do you deal with that?
Excellent question. I love that you ask it, because it's a reality that's maybe becoming more and more real. So first of all, no, we're not physical therapists. But we need to know as much as a physical therapist. So, whether there are all kinds of different, professions within the movement or body realm. There's massage therapists, there's chiropractors, there's surgeons, right? We all do different things with or about the body. So we have different niches and specialties, but we have to know the same foundational anatomy, and then more in a certain direction. So the difference between a physical therapist and a Pilates teacher, in my opinion, is a physical therapist is trained to work on damaged tissue. So they do manual adjustments, they have laser, they have infrared, they have all these different modalities, and taping, kinesiotaping, taping, all kinds of stuff. They have techniques that can help tissue heal. I, as a Pilates instructor, don't do that. What I do, what I explained earlier, is I correct movement patterns. So let me explain that with my ACL tear, because it was such a clear explanation again of how this works. So yes, I cannot fix my torn ACL, but when you have, so, you know, in the first 2 weeks of this injury, my knee was really swollen and I could barely put any weight on my left leg. So I was limping the whole time. After 2 weeks, my right side that I was overusing got so tired. And then you get all these ripple effects of like just tightness, of, you know, being uncomfortable. So once I was able to get back on the reformer and balance myself out and move both sides, because I was able to just, you know, not use anything below my knee, just use my thighs and above my legs, above my knees. I was able to balance my sides. Oh my God, I got off the reformer after the session. I felt so much better. So, and this is helping me heal. Yes, it's not helping me repair my ACL, but it's helping my body stay balanced, and it helps the healing of that. I mean, I don't want to talk about that a torn ACL can't heal, but what I'm saying is, like, you support the healing process with balancing out the rest of the body.
That's right there. That's the statement. It balances out the whole body.
Yeah.
Rise balances the whole body out. So to finish us up here, so yesterday we talked about the difference between other exercises. I mean, to be honest, I think Pilates and yoga are very different. And how do you break that sort of barrier, knowing that, well, it's like yoga, well, but it's not? How do you explain to people that it's so different?
You caught me off guard there, because I get that question all the time, and I recently answered it in a really good way. And now, of course, I don't remember how I answered it, but I will, let me think real quick. So I think it's basically the purpose behind it. I think, like I said before, what makes Pilates are the Pilates principles: control, coordination, awareness, concentration. And so because especially with yoga and mat Pilates, some of the exercises look very similar. So,
Yes.
then we steal from each other. Yoga classes do Pilates exercises and Pilates does yoga, exercises. So it's not about the form of the exercise, it's the purpose behind it. And again, I don't want to talk too much about what the purpose of yoga is. I think there's a huge spiritual and mental aspect of why you do poses. In Pilates, it's, in my opinion, again, it's all about biomechanical function. It's all about improving the machine, even though it's not just the machine. It's about improving motor control. It's about training the brain-body connection. You have to teach your brain to use a certain muscle. You can actually lose that connection, right? If you've injured, your muscles atrophy, if you don't use a certain area of your body, the associated part in your brain just shuts off, stops firing. So you have to rebuild those connections, for instance. That's what Pilates does. It just improves the functioning of the machine.
Whole body, not just one part.
Absolutely. Not
So
just your core.
not just the core, not the core, and it emanates from the core, but it's all works together. So,
Everything.
I think the misconception of Pilates, what I've heard over the years, is that we just sit around, we don't do exercise. I think the shift that you had talked about earlier is that we need to understand that the people who's coming into our studio, they're looking for a workout. Yes, they want to learn about the body, they want to learn about the function, but they also are looking for a workout. So that's an additional challenge for an instructor. Agree?
Yeah. Of course. And I actually would say they're not, most of the time, they're not interested in learning about their own body.
That's yeah, correct.
They
Right?
just want to feel better or they want to look better.
So how
Whatever
the challenge of being an instructor is be able to say all of that stuff, all the things we've talked about today, anatomy, this and that, and at the same time, they're walking out and feeling like they're going to work out. And it breaks away that misconception. All you do is sit around and you talk about imprinted spine for a half hour. It doesn't work that way. So, but that's the other challenge of being an instructor and understanding the function of what Pilates is and communicating that to them because they deserve that information. They deserve that information, but they get to work out at the same time.
Absolutely. So I think the first step is you need to know, you as a teacher needs to know, why is that person there? Just have a normal conversation, figure it out. And a lot of people don't know and they can't express it very well, but it's good enough. I mean, if they say, I just want to feel better, that's a good start, right? But yes, the more you can find out why somebody is in your class, what they want to get out of it, the better. That's the first thing. And then I only tell my clients any anatomical information or anything that, it's important for me to know, but I only tell them that if I find that it's really necessary for them to do the exercise the way I want them to do it. So basically, it's just a matter of convincing them. It's about a matter of, please try it my way, because if you don't, then we're not going to get anywhere, or, this problem's not going to go away, or whatever the reason behind it is. But otherwise, I think as a Pilates teacher, you have to have like two ways of talking, like the one where you talk to yourself, right? You figure out what's going on and what you do. So it's this internal dialogue of your problem solving. But then what you actually say out loud is a completely different thing, because and I think that's a big problem. I don't want to say problem, but that's what I think holds a lot of teachers back in terms of their success. Because if you start to talk too much to clients about, oh, we got to change your movement patterns and you expand your breath, and if you do all of this, people just don't get it, because it's a journey to get there in your understanding, and most people are not there. So you cut yourself off from your potential business, really, because you're not on the same page. We talk a lot about in Pilates about meeting people where they're at physically, but you also need to meet them where they're at mentally. And yeah, I usually say it takes people, new Pilates students, 6 months, around 6 months, to have that aha moment and breakthrough moment where they're like, oh, this is what we're doing. But you have to get them there.
When you're talking, they only retain about 5% of what they hear.
Yes.
So you just have to be selective, or just,
Say less, just say less.
remind them or whatever it is, but you also have to make it fun. So I actually, that you answered my question I asked earlier. That was about two things that you would do. That's that one thing you just said is probably the most important thing, because we want people to exercise. We want a business, of course. We want to make a living. We want to be able to do that. And the bottom line, we want these people to feel good.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Mara, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes, I enjoyed it.
This is MaraSievers. She has the Pilates Encyclopedia. I will put the link, if you're watching on Facebook, I'll put this link on there and on my podcast too. So thank you again for doing this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank
Really
you
like yes, Pilates enthusiast.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for all these conversations. I think it's so great to connect people with each other, to spread new thoughts, to give hope, right? So thank you so much.
Give hope. Yes, good. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching or listening to DJ Storybook Podcast. My name is Brian Murphy. I was your host today. Check out my podcast, the DJ Storybook Podcast. I have a website. There are other interviews if you want to go. All right, guys. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day, everybody. Bye-bye.